welcome to the Get Inspired with Dr. Barb show.
Hello and welcome to Get Inspired with Dr. Barb show. We are so happy to have you here with us today. I have a really special guest today. I love her work, everything she does, all the credentials she has, and everything she stands for. Fabulous AJ Cullen Landro. Welcome, AJ.
Thank you so much, Dr. Barb. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you today on your episode.
You're very welcome. But I have to say that I would like you not to call me doctor.
Okay, not a problem.
Just call me Barb. And before we start, I would like to just mention that you are certified, I would say we should say independent certified social worker by education, correct?
Correct. Yes, I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker in the state of Massachusetts.
Awesome. And I know that this position, many schools have social workers.
Yes, absolutely. Many schools do have social workers. The credentials and licensing letters tend to vary by state, but they do.
Great. But you are also certified animal assisted intervention professional.
I am. Yes, I obtained that certification almost 2 years ago now.
Amazing. And these two credentials work together for you on your job. And the first thing I would like to ask you is if you could take us, like, let's say, on a typical, I know there is never a typical school day in school, but just more or less a typical, let's say, hour of your work where you combine your education and your certification in animal assisted intervention, what you would do during such an hour in a school with children. I think that's going to really set the stage for what you do.
Absolutely. So I'll share a few examples dating back to when I was working in a school for children with emotional and behavioral challenges. And as you said, no day was alike. And I would really tailor and base the interventions on the students that were present in the classroom and if I was working with students in a group setting versus if I was working with them one-on-one. So a typical hour may look like if I'm working with a student one-on-one doing a particular animal assisted therapy intervention, having a therapeutic goal associated with it, and then finding an activity that I'm able to combine to help the student work on that goal with the support of the animal. An example of this might be a student that is working on trying to improve their expressive communication or even their written communication. You and I have chatted before, and my favorite example of this is I had a student that really struggled with expressing how he was feeling. He had a lot of frustration and anger that he couldn't verbally express. And what we did is we would email the therapy dog, my late dog Ella. And through the year, that helped him not only work on his expressive communication by writing it out, but with Ella's presence, he then became more comfortable and able to verbally communicate his feelings to her. And by the end of the year, a little bit to me, even if Ella wasn't present. So within that hour, it may just be working with him one-on-one, helping him write that email to the dog, or when the dog was present, providing that companionship and additional prompts to him when he did begin speaking with Ella, trying to encourage him by saying, wow, that, sounds like it's really tough. I could see Ella's, really interested. Maybe could you tell her a little bit more about how that made you feel? And having that opportunity for him to direct his thoughts and feelings towards the dog kind of broke down that barrier of having to express them to me as an adult or as a professional.
I love this example. And actually, I have a question about this example. How
Sure.
this idea kind of like originated, because a kid writing a letter or an email. And I mean, kids like technology, right? So you are
Yes.
incorporating all these different factors, and then they write into the dog through technology. I mean, it's so much fun. How did this idea originated? Like, did it kind of like popped into your brain?
Yes and no. So, again, one of the great things about animal assisted services is that they can be casual or they can be very planned and intentional. So, this started as a very casual encounter. I didn't anticipate that we were going to be able to tie it to a therapeutic goal that we were able to work on for the whole year. But I've grown up with dogs. My family are big dog people, and we've always talked as the dogs. And when I was in college, I lived really far away from my family, and I got Ella as a puppy, and Ella made her own email address. So my family would actually write emails to the dog, and then even my friends in college just got such a kick out of it. So they would email the dog, and then I would email back as Ella. So with poor punctuation, spelling errors, some letters would be capital, some would be lowercase in an effort to make this really appear like it was Ella sending an email. And it was just a fun way to connect with family and friends, when you're far away. And I had that experience in the back of my mind, and I suggested it with this student because Ella didn't come to school with me every day. There were days that she stayed at home. So I thought it could be a great way to build on his interest and enjoyment of spending time with her, even when she was out of the classroom. So that's how it came to be.
So you incorporated your own experiences. And
Yes.
but that's really when we think about, I mean, this podcast is about teaching and innovation in teaching. And one of the most important aspect in teaching is to experiment, to come up with ideas that you have no idea about. But then there is
Right.
something that inspires you. There is this kid who has some issues, there's something going on. And then you are like to work with animals, and then you incorporate something from the past, your previous experiences, and really all you do is kind of try it, because I mean, we never know if it's going to work, but that's the beauty of
Right.
it.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that is important to bear in mind too is that I very rarely have used the same solution or approach with multiple students. So I really try to tailor the work that I'm doing, whether it be in the school setting. I also worked in nursing homes with my late therapy dog Ella and my current dog Lola, really tailoring the intervention to the person that you're working with. And I feel fortunate to have my clinical training and educational background that as a social worker, you're really trained to meet the person where they're at and to get to know them as an individual. And in doing so, I found that that has been really effective in helping me then bring in the animal assisted intervention specialist piece of who I am, because I'm able to fine tune those interventions and come up with ideas that are going to work for that student. I have another student that I work with outside of the school setting, and she struggles with a reading disability where the words float off of the page. So that email solution for that student wouldn't be effective, even though it was really transformative for this other student. So for her, we do different art projects where we have my current dog Lola involved, and she guides Lola through the activity. She gives Lola instructions, and it helps her work on turn taking, being assertive, using her voice. So really tailoring it to the student that you're working with at that time.
I loved how you said that you are in this work, you are attuned, you are taking cues, information, and you adjust. And that's how these ideas come in. And then you just figure out, is it going to work or not? And I'm thinking also that working with animals actually is like that. You kind of have to pay attention to what your dog is doing, what they like, what they
Absolutely.
dislike. They're not going to say anything to you using human language. So that's
Right.
why we are so attuned. So this is like almost like a revelation that just came to me right now. If for teachers who work and if if sometimes, because I know it's hard to be a teacher, and there's a lot of things you have to do, and sometimes
Hmm.
you are constrained and maybe think
Absolutely.
you can't really experiment. But if you bring like your interactions with animals and how you're attuned and how you then use this information, that might help teachers maybe in trying to experiment a little bit more actually.
Absolutely. And I think too, we're fortunate in the days that we are now with the internet and social media, where a lot of, those of us that are involved in the field are sharing our ideas and our activities on social media. I follow several teachers that
Mm.
have either therapy animals in their classroom or a fully trained facility animal that's working in the school. And you can learn from one another in a really quick, easy, and informal way by just, scrolling through Instagram and seeing what other folks are doing. Because again, it's really going to vary on your school, your classroom. The examples that I gave were both experiences where I was working with a child one on one. Well, having a whole classroom sit there and write an email to the dog might not be as engaging. So you also have to tailor to what setting am I in? How many students am I working with? What's their level of engagement? And really being able to kind of fine tune and develop the work and the activities that you're going to do based on the population that you're going to be working with.
Exactly. And even when I ask my guests, well, teach us an activity, we have to, of course, understand that this activity is subject to modification, but that's what we do with ideas. We never just take them as they are. They have to work in a certain setting with children, just like you
Right.
are saying. But if I was going to ask you to teach us like the simplest activity, let's say a teacher already has a animal therapy team. They come in regularly and they are maybe just doing something very simple, walking around the classroom, or the dog is sitting down, laying down, and the children are reading. And let's say the teacher would like to break it up a little bit and do something different, maybe. What would you suggest as an activity worth trying, maybe? And of course, modifying too, perhaps.
Right. Oh my goodness, there are so many. So to answer your question about the simplest activity, and you alluded to it in asking the question, that we see as really successful is the students reading to the dogs or to the therapy animal. There are over 9 species of animals that can be registered as therapy animals. My experience, of course, is with dogs, so I usually draw from that. But reading with the animal, and then again, based on the student or the classroom, you can also break that up by incorporating something such as coloring sheets in between it. If it's an elementary aged group, for other students, I had writing prompts that I would do about the therapy dog. So I would have, a sentence starter at the top. And again, you could modify this based on the age or the cognitive abilities of the classroom. And they would be able to work on that, because sometimes we wouldn't have all the students crowded around the dog in reading. It would just be a few students at a time. So a way to keep the other students in the classroom engaged could be having them work on that animal themed writing prompt, have them work on a coloring sheet. The other activity that I found to be really effective, it was actually when I was working in the nursing home, so I know it's a little different, was just having the students give the dog obedience commands. So sit, lay down, shake, things like that can be very simple and they're quick. So it's easy for turn taking, especially if you're working with younger kiddos that maybe don't have the same attention span and patience.
And it involves them in an activity and interaction with an animal. So there's
Yes.
so many learning benefits of it. What kind of writing prompt would you suggest? One or two? Of course, they can be all different ones depending on maybe even what kind of dog is coming or other therapy animal. But can you give us an
Right.
example of a prompt?
Yes, absolutely. So the one that I actually have a framed picture of it in my office, it was my dream pet. And that was the sentence starter, was my dream pet is. And one of my students actually wrote about my late dog, Ella, uh,
Wow.
which is why I've kept it and framed it. And it was just, had the lines with little dots in them so they could practice their penmanship as well. It had an opportunity for them to draw a picture of their dream pet as well. So he drew a picture of Ella, and it was just a few sentences that he wrote. And, I had other students that came up with animals that didn't even exist for their dream pet, students that wrote a cat, students that wrote a dragon. But then it also gave us an opportunity to share them with one another. So I would have the students, depending on what we were working on, either read it to the class or get in small groups and talk about, okay, well, what did you put for your dream pet? So there are ways you can take that one simple activity and then either use it to expand it if you need to take up a bit more time, or maybe you revisit it later in the week when your students have finished an activity more quickly than you anticipated, as opposed to having idle time. Hey, pull out your dream pet prompt and let's get into small groups and talk about it.
I love it because again, you can just branch out and ideas will just come
Exactly.
based on even such a quite simple activity, really. If I would, and thank you so much for sharing these. And I
Yeah.
know you have more ideas because I know that you can help other teams, teachers, therapy dog teams, if they would like to get more ideas, maybe they're not so sure. You would be able to kind of coach them, help them, provide some help a little bit too, because you've experienced with that. So that's absolutely wonderful. If I was going to ask you if you could give me like one, the most memorable situation in which you realized, oh my goodness, the power of incorporating therapy animals in the classroom with a child is really absolutely amazing. I know that there are probably more than one.
Yes, absolutely. I would say my entire experience in the first classroom that I worked in with Ella really solidified that for me. I worked in a classroom, as I mentioned, for children with emotional and behavioral challenges. So it was 8 boys, 8 young men that were between the ages of 8 and 12 and had some, previous traumatic experiences, came from the inner city. Many of them had never had their own pet. And my dog, who I've referred to through the episode today as Ella, her full name is Cinderella, and she was a 13-pound poodle mix. So I really did not think that I was going to get, these young boys who had had, these sorts of experiences to buy into interacting with a 13-pound poodle. Never mind when you throw the name Cinderella on top of her. I thought they would be like, Miss AJ, no. And having her in the classroom was just, it was so transformative for me as a professional. And I took from that experience that I did have a way to combine my love of animals with my love of working in special education. And previous to that, I had always thought that they would have to be two separate things. I didn't necessarily believe that there was a way that I could truly marry the two and find a way to do them both. And it was simple experiences. It was the student, watching him make progress with writing emails to then verbally speaking to me. I had another student where we had a mock talk show. I know I told you about that one the last time we chatted. And even, students in that classroom, we had a lead teacher and then myself and 2 other paraprofessionals. So it was a very high staff to student ratio. And even students that I wasn't, responsible for or had worked with or maybe had some differences with, even with them, we could find a commonality in interacting with the dog. And it just helped to break down those barriers between, myself, the students and other classmates. I really can't say enough about that first year where we incorporated Ella into the classroom.
That's amazing. And also the fact that you're going back to the first experience of seeing the power of including therapy dogs. And it's so funny
Yes.
how sometimes we assume it might not work, right? Poodle,
Right.
boys, we even think about what they're going to say.
Exactly.
And then it doesn't work
Exactly.
that way. It turns out to be a hit.
Right. Absolutely. It was such a hit. And I mean, they really bonded with her. And it was also great to see them learn how to like kind of step outside themselves and think of another living being, which is one of the great things that we're seeing in some of the recent research that's being published about children with autism interacting with therapy or service animals, is that it helps them to develop empathy. Something as simple as being able to say to them, "Oh, did you see how Ella cowered and kind of put her head down when you raised your voice like that? Maybe we could try to keep our voice, at a quiet level when we're reading to Ella." And having that distinct visual cue that they can look at and be like, "Oh, my voice or my behavior directly impacted the dog, and now the dog doesn't want to interact with me in the same way," can be a really powerful way to help kind of shape and grow awareness of one's behavior.
Thank you for mentioning this because I hope that the topics we have on this podcast will also help in school all these populations of children who often struggle in school. And even with the team of wonderful teachers, psychologists, there is still something sometimes missing. And
Absolutely.
and animals have this special magical, it's actually described in the research, so it's not like it's totally magic, we know about
Right.
it, and they have the power to help the child in getting through some difficult situation or help in learning.
Absolutely.
Maybe a child is not able to understand why an adult feels in that way or take the perspective, but somehow they will take the perspective of the dog. And isn't it
Absolutely.
incredible? Could you tell us a little
Absolutely.
bit, actually, thank you, about your, I know that you have a website and it's related to your passion also for helping autistic children. If you could tell us a little bit about this, what kind of initiative it is and what you thinking about accomplishing with it.
Absolutely. I have a small business called Autism Barks, and Autism Barks is an organization that aims to share education and research with the field, with parents, practitioners on the power of combining animal assisted services for individuals with autism, whether that be children or adults. And what I have done most extensively is travel to a variety of different autism based conferences as well as animal assisted intervention conferences to present on the current research, identify the gaps that we're finding and that need to be addressed, and try to really spread awareness on how effective animal assisted interventions can be for certain students, autistic individuals, because as we know, no treatment modality is one size fits all. And another arm of Autism Barks that I'm really passionate about and hoping to grow in 2025 is providing consultation and program development to other practitioners that don't know where to start, or to school districts, therapy centers that want to incorporate therapy or facility animals into their setting, but don't know where to begin or don't know how to get started, and helping them come up with activities, design, if it's a therapy center and they need specific goals that can be worked on so the sessions can be insurance billable, helping with the writing and development of those and things of that nature.
So sounds like 25 will be pretty rich, really interesting year for you for the small business. You're looking into expanding it. And I love that because I think that in many cases, unfortunately, autistic individuals and individuals also probably with other disabilities. I can mostly speak to autism because my child is on the spectrum. In many cases, they just kind of a little bit left out. Like there are services, there is help. We can't say that there isn't, but somehow in many cases, these individuals are not growing in like embracing their own self value, because I think to me education should be empowering, and it should empower all the children no matter what your condition is, your disability,
Absolutely.
your difference. I don't really like the term disability so much, or your difference. And
Hmm.
unfortunately we are still not there, and I think that including therapy animals in responsible, proper ways,
Hmm.
with consultation with such experts like you, would really make a huge difference. So you will probably be out there more,
Yes.
do some more advocacy, and I'll be very happy to, with our episode, to bring attention to your mission too. If you
Thank
could tell us, you're welcome, what other about your website again, and what other social media platforms you are active on, so people can follow you, check out your work, and share about it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Absolutely. So my website is www.autismbarks.us. So not .com, but .us. And on there, you can learn about the mission of Autism Barks. You can get some more detail on my full background and bio, what led me here today. You can see lots of really cute pictures of Lola, which tends to bring a lot of traffic to the site. I think people mainly go there to check her out more so than myself, and that's perfectly okay with me. She's a love.
Yes.
And then I also have an Instagram and a Facebook, which are both at Autism Barks. We're most active on Instagram, sharing different tips and tricks for animal assisted service work. Again, photos of Lola, facts about dogs, facts about autism. And then I also am on LinkedIn at AJ Cullen Langell. And I do also have my own podcast that I co-host with one of my closest friends that is called Rising Voices. And we also bring in all experts and those that work in the human service field and autistic individuals to give their experience and share their expertise with us. And we have had a few folks that have joined us that have talked about their service animals or animal assisted services as well.
That's amazing. And when I publish, we're going to also include the links in the show
Wonderful.
notes and on social media when I will be posting the clips to bring some more attention to you and your incredible work.
Thank
And we
you.
just want to ask everybody to follow AJ, to share about this work. It's amazing, and let us know what you think. If
Yes,
you have
please.
questions, and we are happy to do whatever we can to spread awareness about this incredible work. More people should know
Thank you.
about it, more school. But if more people know about it and more parents, then I think they'll be able to also do some more advocacy with the school districts, I think. So it's not just about reaching out to teachers or administrators,
Absolutely.
but to anybody, I think, because education is everybody's business, really.
Absolutely. And as I said, I do provide consultations not only to schools, but to individuals and families who are looking to navigate if, getting a pet dog is right for their child with autism or pursuing obtaining a service dog versus having their child engage with a therapy dog at school. So that's also something I'm very passionate about doing, is empowering families. I myself have a loved one on the spectrum who actually dislikes dogs. So there's the kicker for you. But, I love to connect with families and provide support and guidance to them as well, because I know as a family member how tricky it can be to navigate the service system.
That's incredible information. You are involved in so many things, but they are all wonderful, wonderful initiatives. Thank you so much, AJ. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.